Hi everyone, this is a video edition of the Scattered podcast. I'm Yvonne Chorlin. I'm a physical or biological anthropologist and archaeologist, and this is a short video of my contribution to the Alberta portion of a cross-Canada scavenging project led by Dr. Sherry Forbes. To learn more about Sherry and the origin of this project, listen to episode 16 of the audio portion of this podcast. In a nutshell, law enforcement need to recover as much potential forensic evidence as possible to help solve cases. They approach Sherry with two questions. Where do we search for this evidence and how far do we search for it? To help answer these questions, Sherry wants to identify the scavengers and their scavenging behavior to figure out who may have influenced the movement of this evidence, and then also to map the dispersal of the evidence so we know where it went. By identifying the scavengers and their scavenging behavior and mapping the dispersal of the evidence, we hope to see patterns and be able to answer the two questions of where and how far to search for the remains so that we can answer this for law enforcement. So having these ideas and these questions is all fine and dandy, but how do you do this? How do you identify the scavengers and map the dispersal of the remains? Well, that's where this video comes in. I'm going to show you. As with the Alberta sites, we chose to place two pigs each in one site. Both pigs were clothed. One pig was in a forested or closed canopy situation, like this site, and another pig, clothed, was put in an open canopied situation. As usual, we dressed the pigs in clothing. We put a cable around the pig to help it stay within frame while the scavengers worked and did their magic upon it. With this pig, I don't believe we had any trackers. I wasn't at this site at the deposition, so you get to see all this marvelous footage as I'm looking at it. We had 3 cameras overlooking the pigs, and one of those cameras was a video camera. Then we set the cameras and we left and waited for the scavengers to show up. It took about a week before the first scavengers started to appear. The first were turkey vultures by day. Then, by night, coyotes started to appear and scavenge. This continued until more coyotes showed and more animals showed, and eventually, together, they all moved the carcass and dispersed the remains. Okay, it is June 26, 2023. We are at the Tway closed site in Saskatchewan. This is on a private landowner's property. We're right adjacent to an open area. Just give a zoom around here. And this is our egress point. So the pig was originally placed on June 4th, 2022. Sherry visited July 14th, 2022, and it is now June 26th, 2023. So we didn't have any winter visuals on this. It was just a couple visits, and I believe we had some CPS handlers come out in October to take down the cameras. So here's the egress, and you can see we've already got some remains flagged out here. And right in here is our original deposition point. So here's our original deposition point. We had a camera back over on that tree, the tree beside the outhouse there. We had a camera, where are we here? I believe the video camera was there, which is good because it caught the egress point, and I believe Sherry had another camera there. So here's the original deposition point right here. We had skull, ribs, full mandible, all right here. We had half of the ox coxa here, half of the pelvis here. And game trail, you can see, goes there. And we had dispersal area through there. So there's the open area right there. Here's our egress point. And here's the outhouse. So we had a trail there. We have found the green dress. It was dressed in a green dress. We found that there with some vertebrae, ribs. We also found an articulated piece of vertebrae there with some ribs and some odds and sods there. We found a burrow back in there with some bone fragments. So it was a small burrow, likely not a coyote, probably a small mammal, and it was chowing down on some long bones. So we found some fragments and some scat with some bone in the scat. And then towards the north, so that's east, west, south, and I'm standing right on the original deposition point. So towards the north, we also had some odd remains, I believe a couple femur over there and a humerus, so some limb bones in there. So again, there's the open area in there. And we've got the original deposition point. That way is west, north, south, and east. When I did an inventory on the remains we recovered about 1 year after we deposited the pig, I found that we had recovered about 50% of the skeleton. When we compared this to the Alberta study, we found that recovering 50% was actually pretty good. When I looked at what types of bones made up the remains we recovered, I saw it was mostly vertebrae and ribs, and this was on par with the Alberta study. So what do we know so far? At this site, our main scavenger was coyotes. They started scavenging about a week or so after we deposited the carcass. There were quite a few remains left, and so we recovered about 50% of the skeleton. And the remains we recovered were mostly vertebrae and ribs. What have we learned overall across all our sites? We learned that our main scavengers are coyotes, bears, and birds. Game trails can be created or used by scavengers to access the carcass and to disperse the remains. We learned that sometimes there is a difference in the number of remains observed at the preliminary search and the number of remains collected at the final search. We also learned that we mostly collected vertebrae and ribs. This video wouldn't have been possible without the study led by Dr. Sherry Forbes. The RCMP were instrumental in helping us find land to use, coordinate the searches and carcasses, and of course, to let us know if this information is useful to them. Many big thanks to the landowners and pig growers. We couldn't have done this research without you. To find out more about this study, tune into my podcast, Scattered, One Person's Search for the Story Behind Human Remains, available on your favorite podcast platform. Also, check out the other videos in this series, available on my website, yvonnechorlin.com, and read about it on my blog and on Facebook.